Hi, it's Mimsy here. If you're thinking of doing epoxy backsplash along with your countertop, then this video is for you. I am going to show you how I did an epoxy backsplash at my friend's house. I don't go into the whole design process. I don't really show you how I actually do the marbling and the actual epoxy pour, but I do show you how I cut the wood, what kind of wood that I used for the backsplash, how I attach it to the wall, and all the little details about how to do an epoxy backsplash. So if you're thinking about doing an epoxy backsplash, watch this video. There's some really good tips towards the end about cutting it and attaching it to the wall, so stick around. Let's do a backsplash. Also, for those of you who are here for sewing, believe it or not, I'm not going into the epoxy business as much as it seems like it. I will get back to sewing videos next week. So let's get started on this backsplash. So my friend had tile counters and tile backsplash, which she removed, and then she removed the cement board that was underneath the tile, which left us with a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, which I then bondoed and sanded and basically just repaired, and then we were able to just paint that 3/4 inch plywood to use for our epoxy countertop. Okay, so here's the templates, or these aren't the templates. I used actually this brown paper to make templates yesterday. Took the templates home and traced them onto this thin plywood, which is flooring underlayment, sometimes called Luan. Sold at Home Depot and Lowe's for about $14. I have a UPC for that. I'll link it in the description below. So anyway, I cut that, and it does fit around here just right. Comes right to the edge of the wall. So that fits perfectly. I have cut a piece to go this distance all the way across. I put the seam there, and then I have a full piece that goes back there. They're gonna get a slide-in range, that'll go right to the countertop, and then a microwave that goes there. So now I need to just cut the electrical outlet, and then I'm ready to go ahead and give these a light sand and put 2 coats of paint on those and let those dry sufficiently. And then I need to put another coat of paint there and another coat of paint here and let all of the paint dry, and then tomorrow I'll be ready to pour the epoxy. I'm going to pour the epoxy inside on sawhorses, so I'll set up plastic sawhorses and pour the epoxy on the backsplashes on sawhorses. This is my most asked question on all my epoxy videos, is what kind of epoxy do you use? And I've used a lot of different kinds. I have been using Total Boat for the last couple projects. They have so graciously sent me some of their epoxy for a few different projects, and I did use Total Boat for this kitchen. It's a great product, and the best part is you can order directly from their website and you can get every supply that you need for the whole project in one shipment. It's fast, it's easy, and it is affordable. They've got very good prices. The product is excellent. So I have everything set up in a back room because it's so hot here in Florida. I couldn't do it outside in a garage. And I have one piece on top of the sawhorses, and then the other pieces are on the ground on top of those little Dollar Tree containers, just to lift them up off the ground so that the epoxy doesn't pool on the ground around them. Otherwise they would just get stuck to the plastic, and then I would have a mess around the edges of the epoxy. So I've got all my epoxy set up, my Part A and Part B bucket that I labeled so that I could reuse them, because I'm going to pour the epoxy backsplashes and then go in the kitchen and do the countertops. There's my spray paint, which I'm going to spray right outside that back door into the buckets. So when I'm ready to start putting on the color, I will pool some spray paint in the buckets and then bring it into the house and start drizzling it. Okay, so I'm just about finished in this kitchen. It just was a real small little job. This is pretty much the extent of the kitchen, this L-shaped countertop plus this little overhang here. And I'm now installing, so the epoxy's all set up, and now I'm installing the backsplash, which is, you know, from here all the way around, and then I'm going to go here because this is where their slide-in range will be, and then they're going to put a microwave up here, so this part will all be exposed epoxy, and then the fridge goes there. and then they are painting the cabinets and they'll reinstall those. But I just wanted to show you how I'm doing the backsplash. So I used liquid nails, construction adhesive, and I just put that all over the back side of the backsplash pieces, which are just thin plywood. And then I'm holding them against the wall to set up with these roofing nails, which have a large round head. So I'm just carefully tapping them in, and that's what is holding this against the wall so that they'll dry. And then once those come out and this is all set up, then I'll run a thin bead of caulking along there, and then of course a thin bead of caulking in between all of the backsplash and the countertop. So that's the way that will work. So there is a little bit of a gap there, but it's okay. Once the silicone caulking is in there, it will close that nicely. It's not a big gap, but, and really, no matter what, you have to put some silicone caulking in there. Even if it was just completely tight seam, you would still need to put some caulking in there. So that is where I'm at today, and they're getting a new dishwasher, new sink and new faucet. They got a new microwave and a new slide-in range. Refrigerator is the same one, but it's nice and white, so they're gonna have a bright kitchen. So this part, I am just pushing the backsplash up against the wall to make sure I've got a good bond with that liquid nails, and then putting a few more nails in there, and then I started to do the silicone caulking around the windowsill, behind where the sink is going to be, and up underneath the cabinet, between the cabinet, the upper cabinet, and the backsplash. All finished. The caulking is in all the crevices. Oh, I need to grab that paper over there, Joe, so let me show you up close. So this is the seam. Okay, one thing about the seam that's super important is that I used the factory cut edge to create that seam. So think about that when you're cutting your plywood. I used the factory edge on that seam as well as the factory edge against the countertop. So that long piece, that long backsplash piece, I used the factory edge against the countertop, so that would be a nice straight cut. And then I used my cut edge against the top where it meets the upper cabinets.
Get that piece. I need to get that piece. There. So let me bring in close on some of the design, see if you can get. So that's the gray that I mixed myself, and then this is French beige. This is the gray that I mixed with just black and white spray paint. And then I come back in with white afterwards and add some of that in there because the white does something different and really gives an interesting, looks much darker on camera than in person. But everything looks a little bit more yellow on the camera, but I like the way that the brown separates like that, or that's actually French beige is the color. Let me bring it down to the countertop and see. So it's very soft and very subtle. It actually looks much more color in the video. In person, it's actually a lot softer and more subtle. And I think that the key to getting these really fine, let me see if I can make this, getting these really fine lines, like this one here, is letting the epoxy in the bucket that has the paint mixed in set up quite a bit. And then when you drizzle it down over the countertop, it doesn't just spread out. so you can get some really, really fine vein lines like that and like this. You can barely see it, but that's a really fine vein line. And then like right here, you can get, I've got 3 really fine vein lines here. And the reason why they're so fine is because the epoxy was set up real, almost to the point where I could just barely scoop it out of the bucket. So anyway, there we go. And the slide and range will go there, refrigerator there, microwave up there. Of course, cabinet doors, outlet cover, sink. Yeah. This is the other angle here, so there's their little bar area. And then into the kitchen. There's some close up of, I can't see how it's drizzled over the edge, but anyway. You can get, I love the way that looks because that's kind of natural looking. And then another vein coming from there, and then they join up and go that way. So another split and that way. And notice how all of my vein lines all go in the same general direction or global direction, because that's the way real marble cracks. In fissures like this, you don't see a line crack going that way and then a crack like perpendicular to it. It doesn't generally do that. It kind of cracks in the same direction. So